In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found no proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson. This week on the show, Adam Schwerner, the artist behind Your Unnatural Garden at Descanso Gardens in Los Angeles, joins us to talk about this playful triptych of installation art, botanical gardens as a canvas, and more. But first, I've got your headlines. Apple mixed reality rumors are heating up after a big article in The Information that features lots of juicy behind-the-scenes details of the development of the mixed reality hardware and why it didn't end up a strictly VR device. That one's behind a paywall, but some of those details are leaking out. Spoilers! Jony Ive is involved, and at one point they were talking about adding a video screen that would show people your facial expressions when you were wearing the device. Which is a really weird idea. But it's not all old news. New reporting from Bloomberg has the Apple board seeing the new device a week ago, suggesting that things are moving forward, and it puts all the recent meta announcements around new hardware in a new light. Shifting IRL for a moment, 2-Bit Circus announced a merger with Alpine Acquisition Corporation, which is also acquiring 2 conference hotels with 739 rooms in Denver, Colorado and Stamford, Connecticut. The new hotels will be branded Revelers Resorts and feature 2-Bit's trademark Steam games, reimagined arcades, and an immersive story experience at the venue. The new company is expected to be renamed 2-Bit Entertainment Corp. I suspect we're going to have more on that later this year. And for the at-home crowd, Horticulture is developing some new products, including interactive jigsaw puzzles, a YA novel, that's young adult novel for those who don't talk the lingo, and a detective's puzzle book, tacking a little more mainstream. This is what happens when I improvise on the script. I then misread something. Tacking a little more mainstream, these new offerings won't replace their subscription mystery offerings, but aim to expand the brand's reach. I wrote offerings twice. I apologize. And those are your headlines. Okay, program note real quick, and I'll get into this a little more on the back end. We are taking a bye week next week. I'll explain all after you get the interview and the pick of the week. Oh yeah, pick of the week's back again. But first, No Pro is brought to you by the generous support of our Patreon backers. Our latest is Richard Ayers, who has joined at the sustaining backer level. Thank you very much, Richard. I'm always shocked and flattered when anyone does that. We are currently standing at 369 backers, which leaves us just 6 backers away from our next goal of 375. We were also up to $2,377 a month, and we're trying to get ourselves up to $2,500 a month, which will be our halfway mark from our big goal of being sustainable. Yes, we remain completely community funded. And I don't know how we do all this on a shoestring, but we do. And we need your help, always. And yeah, I'm not doing the show next week. So that's awkward, but it's for good reason. Like I said, on the back end. The sustaining backers of No Proscenium are Ari Hurston, Chris Woolman, Eric Shamlin, Deborah Robinson, Elaine, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Genties, David Bassick, Lonnie Hanson, Mark Baltazar, Sidney Guillory, and Jan Budman, and yes, Richard Ayers is joining that set. And now, let's get into this week's show. Just off the 2, heading north from Glendale, you'll find the botanical oasis that is Descanso Gardens. There, artist Adam Schwerner was invited to construct a series of installations both on the garden grounds proper, the Sturt Hege Gallery, and the historic Bodie House that stands there. The result is Your Unnatural Garden, a playful take on installation art that invites participation and exploration. Schwerner produced the work with the help of Just Design, Art Mafia, and Pink Sparrow, and he joins us today to talk about the show, which will be up through January 8th. Adam, thanks for joining us.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
This is not your first large-scale installation in a botanical garden, and indeed, botanical gardens are both your day job and your side hustle, by my reckoning. How'd you get started in this world?
Yeah, so I'd like to blame my parents, I think. I think when I was a kid, both my parents are artists. My father, Armand Schwerner, was a poet and performance artist, and my mother, Dolores Holmes Schwerner, was a performance artist, poetess, playwright, actress, tap dancer. She did all sorts of things, and I was around that all the time, their friends, all of the things that they did together. And I think for me, it really released me from the set of expectations that I think people who don't grow up in artistic families have laid upon them, that there's a way of doing things and it's the only way to do things, and there are rules. They were rule breakers, and I think I learned early on not to pay attention to some of the rules, and I think that gave me permission. And so, ever since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to do something in public horticulture, and then as I sort of entered into the world, the professional world of horticulture and botanical gardens, I also knew that I wanted to bring art into the picture, and so I spent my life sort of creating this place that I can play in that's about art and horticulture. And when you bring those two things together, it just kicks ass. And I think this Descanso Garden piece or pieces that have culminated after 3 years of conversation and production sort of epitomize for me the most closely connecting of those two things in my career.
What was the initial lure to horticulture? What was about plants?
I think, no, I've been asked that question 1,000 times. Like, why did you, as a 12-year-old, know that you wanted to go into horticulture in the public realm? And I think what I have to say is that both my parents were really into the environment and actually made a lot of their work happen in and about the environment. And I think somehow that imbued me with a appreciation. And then they got divorced when I was 12, and before and after that, it was just chaos. And I think I found a place of sanctuary that was the out of doors, and the process of making things grow and become beautiful was my meditative space. And I think there was sort of a sanctity that I was able to realize from the living earth. And I think that's I think that's what happened, although I don't remember much before I was 12, so I'm guessing here.
Yeah. I mean, we all kind of mythologize our childhood to one degree or another, right?
Indeed.
Descanso is gorgeous in and of itself. And to my shame, I hadn't been up there until going up to see your show. Yeah. And I felt very fortunate to on the way out, get to just experience it with no people around at functionally about an hour before dusk, when it was very cool and quiet, and just the squirrels and the birds. Talk to me, if you could, a little bit about this garden in particular as a canvas for work, and sort of what it invited and the dialogue you got into with it.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a longer answer than maybe you've asked for. So
let me. Welcome to this show. We do long answers, so don't worry. I'll just mute myself.
That's great. So I'm a botanical garden nerd, right? And so I've been part of the American Public Gardens Association for decades. It's a all of these, every group of people who have interest in something. There's a collection of people that are part of an association associated with that thing. So I worked at the New York Botanical Garden. I visited dozens of botanical gardens. I worked at Chicago Park District. I managed 2 world-class conservatories. And for me, my appreciation for the landscape, the history, the ecology, the making that exists within a botanical garden is directly connected to my relationship with Descanso Gardens, and therefore my relationship to making things for Descanso Gardens. And it is, I think, so botanical gardens are these beautiful things, but they're all somehow fake, right? It's not real nature. It's nature, but it's not real nature.
Right.
It's a produced nature. And there is a way that I like in this exhibition to sort of call attention to the real fakeness or the fake realness. And there's also a way that I'm sort of challenging, at least in my head, if in no one else's, this idea that there's a pristine thing that a botanical garden is, that it is in itself a pureness and a thing that is unaltered by us, humankind. And I think that I am always a little bit, when I work in art making in a public space, tweaking against that set of rule making and expectations. So Descanso for me is that, plus I'm friends with the executive director Julianne Rook, and her team, and the place is she's really trying to make the Descanso Gardens become a place that is for everybody in every way. And botanical gardens do, like museums, like operas, like galleries, there's a worldview about them, that they're a place for some people but not other people.
Yeah.
And I think Julianne is not interested in that rubric, and she wants to confront that. And I'm really interested in confronting that. And the intent of this exhibition was to say everyone who wants to do something can do something. There isn't anyone who cannot. You're all invited. And I think the site, the specificity of the site is, I think, a lot about the intent of Descanso and the institution to become a place for everyone.
And it feels like some of the playfulness of the piece, because the work that's in the Sturt Hage Gallery in particular is interactive.
Yes.
Like this invitation to touch and to kind of mess around with things. That feels like that's part of what you're doing here.
Yes, so there's a whole bunch of things there. So I'm not sure if fun would have been such an important thing for me before. 3 years ago we had political chaos with Trump in office and everything that devolved from that. We had then, following up on that, murder in Minneapolis' streets, and then after that we had COVID, right? So it felt to me like there was a lot of heavy going on, and I think I really wanted to find a way to make a place where people could enter into play or enter into an experience that wasn't about heavy, that was about an experience that they could participate in, and also to some degree have places for people to actually be together and connect. Because I think the last 3 years has been a lot of us not connecting for various reasons. And I just have this almost physical need, particularly when I was in lockdown, right, to be with people. I mean, my life has been about collaboration and engaging with teams and the public, and that was just not available. And so I think one of the things that drove that idea of sort of a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of focus on sort of prettiness is driven by that.
You just mentioned working with teams, and I want to give you a chance here to shout out some of the folks who've been working, because you put together a really nifty, group of collaborators, like working at a bunch of different scales here.
Yeah, so it all started in conversations with Julianne and the team at Descanso, but my friend and collaborator, Quinn Messenger, who I've known for, 8 or 9 years or something like that. He's an architect, and we do this thing where we work collaboratively on his projects and my projects, and we've found a way to really bolster and support one another and question one another when an idea that we're settling on isn't quite brave enough or intelligent enough. So Quinn Messenger sort of started this all with me, and then Kaylee Atchison and Claire McCracken from Art Mafia were sort of at the heart of making the ideas become real, really, by being sort of production, being sort of in charge of the production. And then Pink Sparrow, remarkable group of folks, including Anna Moulton, they constantly had to tell me exactly what you want so I can give you exactly what you're asking for. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to tell you exactly what I want. What I want is to collaborate with you because you are aesthetes and you're experts in how to craft things. And I want you to partner with me. And so it was a really interesting tussle, I think, particularly with Pink Sparrow, because they're used to clients who want exactly A and they get exactly A. And I wanted A, or it could have been D or C.
Right.
And
because they kind of come from like the marketing installation world. They do a lot of, big, scale pop-up stuff from what I understand.
Exactly. And working with their team of about 20 over about 3 months, we produced big things and little things and things that had lots of detail, but we had to make it together. And so, yeah, great team. Very happy to have learned and become part of that creative family.
What you made is built out of recovered and recycled material. Why was that key for you as part of this particular show?
So I'm going to go back to my childhood. So my
Not
father,
again, darn it, Adam! Why is everything good? No, I'm kidding.
It is just what it is, right? So when I was a kid, my father bought 2.5 acres of land in East Hampton, Long Island, when it was, I don't know, $600 an acre or something, $2,000 an acre, just way long time ago.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm going to calm down.
So before it was the place where the literati go, right? And
Right.
so we would go there, and we had a summer house he built, a little thing made out of thin boards, and it was, it was a great place to step off of. But we would go to the dump because that's what you did in East Hampton with your trash. You brought it to the dump. And there was great stuff in the dump, and we used to take it. And I loved the idea of the energy and the history and the sort of tactility that resulted from ownership of things that were no longer owned by the people who had them once. And so there's a line through my creative process that really enjoys, like Joseph Cornell does or did, or many other, there are many people, Louise Nevelson. A lot of people gather things that were belonging at one point to someone else, and then they bring that history and that tactility into their work. So I love that. And so there's this place where people bring their garbage in Irvine called Tierra Verde Incorporated. And I had been going there for a couple of years. There were anything that anyone throws out, it can end up there. So kitchens, entire kitchens, everything in it. Bedrooms, restaurants, everything in the restaurant. Garbage that that would be resulting from landscape services. Entire the rooms that people rent to store stuff. When people don't pay the rent, then it comes over here and it gets dumped there. And then there's also all the waste from the manufacturing wing of cabinet making and furniture making and house building. And all of that stuff comes there. And so I saw these I found them beautiful piles of spent wood waste that were 30 feet tall and 60 feet around, and 200 or 300 bicycles and entire kitchens. And I thought, they're beautiful materials. I want to do something with them. And 30-yard dumpsters of colorful electrical wire that was to be recycled for their copper. So the stuff, the idea for the exhibition actually started with the stuff. Because it was free, it was in abundant supply, and it could help make big things happen. And I've learned over my many years that you need in a landscape that is got big things in it and big space, you need really big things. So it can't be expensive. So that's sort of why, that's how the origin of the used stuff happened.
Well, and it also feels like it is in dialogue with the, manicured natural parts of the garden, right? This sort of life cycle of, here we are, we're humans, we shape the natural world, we create this refuse that is sort of the unnatural world, from a certain point of view, and here it can be put back into the context of the natural world, like sort of completing a circuit.
It's that, but it's also sort of a confrontation between the natural world and these things that are now actually become man-made or person-made, human-made. And that's also why the bright colors are important. It's sort of this juxtaposition and contrast and argument between the natural and the non-natural. And then there is also the fact, I mean, let's just be honest, we are a very wasteful species, at least in the Western world. And, when I go into Tierra Verde and I see a pile of bikes that are perfectly operational, except for maybe a flat or a brake pad that needs to be replaced. And you just think about the waste and the people who could take advantage of that as a mode of transportation, or entire kitchens or entire restaurants of chairs and tables. Like it seems absolutely unacceptable. And I kind of want to call attention to the fact that there's this waste happening and that we collectively could use it in another way. I think, again, Tierra Verde is a great way of resolving it. It doesn't go to landfill, right? It gets recycled. Yeah. But anyway, so that's also part of the commentary.
Your day job is running horticulture at Disneyland. And we were talking before about sort of your path into the botanical world, and sort of how your day job influences your work here with these pieces. What kind of lessons do you learn about, particularly large scale audiences, working at, one of the most trafficked spaces on the planet?
Yeah. So I'm the director of horticulture and resort enhancement for the resort. And so within that title is the team that manages the landscape, yes, but also the team that manages the paint and the carpentry and the hardscape and all of the props and all of the decor and the holiday overlays. And so it's an amazing team. And I feel very privileged to be able to work with everyone and learn with everyone. But I think for me, when I started at Disneyland 8 years ago, I came from Chicago. Had been there for 20 years, managing about 10,000 acres of landscape. And I hadn't understood up to that point that landscape is about and can tell stories. And so when I got to Disneyland, what the Imagineers do, what the Walt Disney Imagineers do, is they tell stories through landscape and hardscape and paving and colors and props. And so it's all about, everything supports the storytelling for the guest, so that we convey the idea that people have gone someplace, right, when they're in an attraction or in a land. And so I learned about landscape and storytelling in a way that I hadn't before. And I think from that also gets this idea that everything can be part of telling the story. And it has influenced, I think, this exhibition some amount, because the things that I did were based on stories either in my head or derived from the garden that I wouldn't necessarily have done in as succinct a way, or been able to do that as well as I have become able to do because of the experience with that practice.
I feel like it all really comes together. Like, I was so impressed by just there are these three major sections, the snakeways leading up to the gallery and the house, and the gallery and the house each have their own identity, but there is just this sense of playfulness. There's kind of almost like it winds up being kind of a ritual, almost going up the way, setting mood and mindset. And then each of the three pieces inside the gallery are distinct, but play with the senses and kind of invite exploration, feed back information to you in ways that you're not expecting. I'm being vague there to not spoil certain surprises, to sort of everyone knows why I'm talking around something. I want people to be delighted and surprised. And then the house is kind of just like got this like anarchic thing going on with, you know, like couches having like springs coming out of them and everything just sort of going wild. And as distinct and odd and kind of juxtaposed as everything is, it winds up being all of a piece. And I just, it's really exciting to have this kind of work happening in Los Angeles and be happening at this sort of scale. So congratulations. And I'm glad it's there.
Thank you. No, I mean, I think when one is doing a thing, when one is planning a thing, one does not know if that will happen. One can hope. And I think for me, it wasn't until it was happening and these two women walked past one of the snakeways next to the entrance, and they looked at it and they were talking. I said, well, what do you think? And they said, well, they're angels. They're the most beautiful angels. And I said, what do you mean? Well, they look like angels to us. And my niece just died, and this is my angel, and I've named this piece after my niece. And so the way that people bring their own meaning to these things, you know, you can never picture that in advance. It just either does or doesn't happen. And that has happened. And that's been really gratifying, because I don't want to impose my interpretation of the things that I've done on people. I want them to be able to bring to it what they want. Some of that will be absolute disinterest. I mean, there are people who are not at all interested. And other people are really inspired or engaged or made happy or made even sad. In this case, we had tears, right? So I'm glad that you felt that it connected it and is of a piece, and that for you, and I think I'm hoping for others, that is an experience that people can have. So thank you for that.
Welcome. Well, hopefully those who are in the Los Angeles area, they can discover for themselves. Your Unnatural Garden will be up through the rest of this year, all the way to January 8th up there at Descanso Gardens, and it is well worth the trip. Adam, thanks for joining us on the show this week.
Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Catherine Yu, the executive editor of No Proscenium. Each week, we publish our review rundown and gather our review crew for a podcast where we check in with what they're buzzing about. But it is here and only here where we reveal the pick of the week. This week, our pick of the week is brought to you by...
Hi there, this is Patrick McLean, the Chicago curator.
Well, Patrick, what is this week's pick of the week?
It is Lost Recipes by Shell Games. This is a VR experience that is available on the Quest, and it is $14.99.
So
available now.
Yes. What makes Lost Recipes the pick of the week?
Two very specific reasons. One, I think this is a highly original experience where you are traveling back in time to learn and prepare culturally important recipes as taught to you by those with Greek, Chinese, and Mayan ancestries. And whether it's learning to prepare food that you could actually later get the recipe off the website and do yourself, or just simply learning like fascinating pieces of historical information, this just makes for a really wonderful time. I think the biggest shocking thing for me was that it is such a slow-paced game in the best possible way, that you have to be mindful in regards to not necessarily the tactile sense of how you hold like a knife and an onion to cut it, but just being mindful to make sure you're chopping it correctly, whether you need slices or you need to dice it, and making sure you're taking the time and being mindful to keep the fire raging, to keep whatever liquid you have on the oven or flat surface to keep it burning. There's such a beautiful attention to detail to make sure that you are being mindful of what's going on as you prepare these wonderfully culturally significant dishes, while then at the same time, the other thing I really like is that there's a chef in the kitchen with you who's kind of helping guide you through it. But in those, maybe those downtime moments where you're waiting for something to finish boiling to the correct temperature, the chef will give you a little piece of historical information, whether it's being about maybe a monument you can see outside the window, or maybe the significance of why this recipe is being made and the importance it is to the people who, originated it and created it. So it's a really wonderful time in regards to just simply being mindful of the world you're around and learning something, which I feel is something that doesn't happen all that much with VR games, or that's not the top priority. It's just simply to have a good time, relax, and maybe learn something, whether it's history or a new recipe that you could make in your own kitchen.
Fantastic. That sounds so great. I love lost recipes as well. Thank you so much, Patrick. And don't forget, you can find the review rundown at noproscenium.com and this week's Review Crew podcast just one click back in your podcast feed.
Once again, I want to thank Adam for being our guest. I want to thank Catherine and Patrick for bringing us the pick of the week. And yes, if you're in Los Angeles, do go up to Descanso Gardens. In fact, if you're in LA, hit up a forest for the trees, hit up Descanso. You're going to make a good day of it. Heck, if you're traveling in, I think that's a great weekend there. In fact, maybe at some point, I really like Descanso. I don't know if you can tell anything. I was like completely charmed. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll do a little meetup. Yeah, maybe a little meetup in Descanso Gardens. What could go wrong? Wait a second. Why did I say that? Why did I say that? Oh, I know why I said that. Okay. I promised you answers as to why we're taking a bye week on the podcast next week. Well, the answer is, my mom had a little hospital scare this week. I was in Pasadena having dinner with a friend. I was in from Pittsburgh, a lifelong friend, and got a call from my aunt because the life alert. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all the details, but she was taken to the hospital. She was in the hospital for a couple of days. Long story short, she's not in any acute danger. And seemingly nothing new, nothing we didn't know about already. But nevertheless, a couple of days in the hospital, and that took me off the board to some degree, not entirely, for the week. But it's also there's some follow-up appointments next week, and that's going to bite into work time. And next week's also Star Wars Celebration. I was already going to go down for Thursday because I couldn't resist. Because you know me, I can't resist Star Wars. I try. No, I don't even try. I gave up trying 30 years ago. And then I got the hookup with a 4-day. So, but I won't actually be there for all 4 days. I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday on Thursday and Saturday, because on Friday, my mom's got an appointment and I got to take her to it. So there you go. More information than you really probably want to know. So yeah, a little bit behind the curve. And here's the other thing. There's some stuff that was meant to be done weeks ago over on the Institute side of things. Some stuff we were preparing for the website that I haven't had a chance to do yet. So I need to take a pause and I need to do those things. We've got some lovely volunteers who provided us with a bunch of research material, and I need to get it up on the website. So I'm the choke point. I hate being the choke point. And so that's a thing I'm going to focus on in this coming week, is getting that done. And that's on the development side of things. And there's just gotta catch up on recording for the podcast. Catherine is starting a new job soon, and gotta focus on setting up the way the social media feed's going to be. We got some stuff we're going to try to sort of spread out the responsibilities amongst everyone, because Catherine's been doing the heavy lift on that for the past few years. And yeah, just lots of changes, and need to take a pause on this part of it. But just for a week. We do this all the time. This is just, I don't like it when it's unexpected. But lost a couple of days. Going to be losing about a day next week between the appointments. So I just got to be realistic. I can't get a podcast out next week. The review crew may very well run. I think they've got something planned, and I'm part of that process as well. So, if they deliver something to me on Wednesday, it'll be up on Thursday morning. Newsletter will still hit. I feel guilty. That's what it is. That's why I'm taking so long to explain this to you. It's just like, as lazy as I am, and I know you're like, how are you lazy? Oh no, I'm lazy. As lazy as I am, I do have this Puritan work ethic stuck in me. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm lazy. It's just this, two wolves. One wants to lounge around and play Xbox, and the other wants to codify the entire universe. So both of them, however, like Reese's. So do not send me Reese's. Catherine, don't send me Reese's, please. It was cute the one time, but I ate all of them, and it broke my diet. There you go. It broke my diet. Anyway, again, too much information. I'm going to save the rest of that, maybe any kind of ramblings for, maybe I'll do an irregular. I'm always saying that. But there's some good stuff going on. Yeah, you know what? I'll go do an irregular. So I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to go do an irregular. That'll be in the bonus feed. We haven't done that in ages. Let's do the credits, shall we? The associate producer of No Proscenium is Parker Sella. The music for this podcast is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. And get better, Siobhan. Yeah. Siobhan got the Rona. I'm checking in on her every day. So by text. She doesn't always tell me how she's doing, but I do check. She always tells me about her projects. I go like, but how are your symptoms? And then she tells me about work. And I'm like, but how are your symptoms? I just called you out. Catherine is still our executive editor for a couple of weeks before she gets absorbed by the mothership. And this podcast is my fault. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, I'll probably see you at the show.